What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Midterm Rental Show. I'm your host, Bailey Kramer, and today on this episode, we are joined by Adrienne Green. She is a real estate investor, private lender. She runs a virtual assistant company, which we're going to talk about too. And I think the coolest part is she is a digital nomad world traveler. So without further ado, Adrienne, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for the chance to talk with you, Bailey.
For sure. And for those just listening, I was on her podcast. I don't know when this will be released and when that episode will be released, but I was on her podcast as well. So this would be a different perspective for me, getting to know you more and learn about your real estate story, virtual assistants, the whole bit. So I wanted to start this off. I was just going through your Instagram and I read your bio, and I'm going to read your bio out loud. And I have some questions, some
Okay.
follow-up questions on it. The bio. I broke free from the grind with virtual assistants and private lending. So that was the bio. I like that. It was really cool. So before we get to where you're at now, you mentioned broke free from the grind.
Mhm.
Tell me bring it back to as far back as you want to when you were in the grind and what that actually looked like.
Well, I think something that I think about a lot that represents that grind to me is so I went to University of Southern California in LA and studied business administration, and then I went and worked for a corporate finance type place, like a fund manager. And I with that, post college applied to all these places, got a job on one part of LA up in Pasadena for those who are listening in the LA area. And then within a year, I got engaged to my, had been college boyfriend, and he got a job on the complete other side of LA. And so we ended up like the housing that we could find was down by his job. And so that meant that I had to be on the road by before 6 a.m. every day to drive on the freeways all the way through LA from one suburb on one side to the other suburb on the other side. And heaven forbid I was 15 minutes late because then the drive was going to take like 30 or 45 minutes longer, right? And I just have so many memories of that rush in the morning of having to get out on time, having to get out the door, like watching the clock like a hawk because a few minutes made such a big difference. And so many memories of driving on the 105 freeway and seeing the sunrise from that freeway. That to me was like the grind.
I totally hear that. And I shared a similar story, but obviously different about kind of what that grind looked like for me on your podcast, which was more so partially seeing the grind of how my parents were
Mhm.
working their jobs and commuting back and forth, and how just that, like just experiencing that from either the third point of view or what you mentioned, how you actually went through that grind, just shapes kind of how you think. So I'm curious, like what were the biggest takeaways from being in that grind for you?
Right. It was just, I went to this office and I felt like I was like a rat in a cage, right? And some of the things, and anybody who works in an office will know, like how you can't control the air conditioning or the heat. And so typically, with this being in Southern California, they're always blasting the AC and it's freezing and you're having to have jackets and gloves, like fingerless gloves, so you can still work on the computer. And that was like, that was when I was just like, hey, I don't feel like I'm helping people. I feel like I'm just a cog in a machine. And I was like, I just felt like I didn't have any freedom over where of what I wanted to do, where I wanted to be, when I wanted to do it. And so my first like leap out of that was actually I was like, okay, well, I need to feel like I'm helping people. Like that's a really core value for me. And I needed to feel like I had a little more autonomy over my time and location. And so I actually went back from this like finance, lucrative looking career and went and became a high school math teacher, which really fulfilled my need to help people. And I did discover that I love teaching and I continue to incorporate that. Like if you're on my Instagram, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm doing lives, I'm doing all these videos because I love to teach and help people and share the wisdom I've learned so they can get further faster. And yet, teaching also still has a lot of bureaucracy. It still doesn't really let you control your time and your location. And it was good enough. Like, hey, I got evenings, I got weekends, I got summers and holidays. Like, that was really good until my husband and I started thinking about having our own kids, our own family. And then it was like, wait, I'm going to leave like this little baby that I am like really like, want to have in order to go be with other people's kids. Like that's where I again felt that pressure of not having the freedom that I wanted. And so that was that was when we started doing real estate investing so that I could get away from teaching and so that I could get away from having to go to this public school every day and so that I could really start to control being where I wanted, when I wanted, with whom I wanted.
Yeah. Okay. So super cool. I want to dive a layer deeper because this is something I'm trying to figure out about people in general. And this might I want to hear your perspective on it. So you mentioned how you felt like a hamster, on a wheel, just in your workspace. You didn't have the control. You didn't have freedom. Now, one thing about that is a majority of people, probably 90, I mean, if I had to guess, 90+% of people feel some in one way or another like that. They feel like they don't have control. They don't have freedom. They don't have, they're not 100% happy with where they're at, whether that's in their job, financially, physically. I mean, every facet. And then I talk to a lot of people specifically about investing in midterm rentals. And there's certain people who look at their situation and say, listen, I have this great job, but I want more. And there's other people who say, I don't like where I'm at, but I'm not going to change where I'm at. And they don't say that word for word because I think
Right.
if they did, that would maybe that'd get them to change. But like, what was the thing, if you could think back, that got you to change versus probably a lot of your coworkers who maybe felt similarly, but decided not to change?
Right. And they probably still work in finance and still work in that office.
Right.
And you're right. And I feel like as you interact with people more and more, like I just love how you describe that, Bailey. And I feel like I can identify that pretty fast now. I can talk to someone who's like, okay, they're just complaining. They're not really going to do anything about it. You can just tell. And I think the truth is that our minds and our bodies, like our psychology and everything, is set up to keep us alive. And it's set up to keep us where we are right now because where we are right now, we are alive and we have stayed alive. And so there's a lot of biochemistry and other things going on there, I think, in the brain that make us have this high fear of failure, right? That make us want to stay where we're safe. And I think in order to overcome that, you have to have something that is like so extreme and core to your values, right? And that's where I think Tony Robbins is so successful because he helps people get to like these core beliefs and like things that they really hold true that can motivate them to have massive change. So I think that if people feel stuck, they've really got to think about how can I make this so uncomfortable that I do feel prompted to change. I think for me, if we want to talk about like a certain instance, one thing I remember is when I worked in this office in Pasadena, my dad coming through for, it was like I think it was Christmas, right? And so he was driving down from Northern California. My sister lived, like, he was in Northern California. I was in LA. My sister was further south. He was driving through to go down to her house where we were going to have the holidays and wanted to meet up for lunch while he was driving through. And it was like this big thing because of the holidays and everything for me to even just get out of the office to go meet him for lunch. And keep in mind, he normally lives like 5 hours away from me at that point in time. So any opportunity to spend extra time with him was really special. And I just remember the stress of having to be like, I had to have somebody else cover for me just while I went out for an hour for lunch with him and all of this drama. And it was like, this is not what I want in my life. And I felt, I think I'm also um, opinionated enough, right? Confident enough, strong willed enough, whatever that can be, we can see it from both sides. That when I see something that I dislike, I am going to fix it. Maybe it's idealistic enough that I think that there can be something better out there. But that's something that was like I don't want this for the next 20, 30, 40 years of my working life.
Totally. Totally. One last note on this. I want to get your perspective on this too, because you are like a professional traveler. But I remember like as a kid and even like I travel a good amount. So I get reminded of it every time I travel. And the most recent travel I had, I went on a cruise for a bachelor party in the Bahamas. We went to Nassau and a smaller island that was technically the Bahamas. I don't even know where it was, honestly. But anyways, the point of the story is these people on this island were so financially poor, and they appeared happy, and they appeared like they were like that was normal to like their situation was normal. Like the houses were all completely run down. Like people, if that was in the US, people would never walk in these streets. But you're in this other place, you see how other people are living, you see how bad it is. And then the way I internalize something like that is I'm here in the US. I am so freaking lucky. There is so much more like like I have it good. Everyone in, I mean, most people in the US baseline have it really good compared to other places. And rock bottom in these other places is 100 times worse, in my opinion, than rock bottom in the United States. Now, obviously, you don't want to get to rock bottom any place you're in, but that's just something for me. Like when I bought my first property relating to that, like I literally emptied my bank account. I had as close to $0 as possible that the bank would allow me to have. And people thought I was crazy because I spent all this money or invested all this money. I never saw the property. I had a high interest rate, and it was like some crazy risk. If I told that to somebody in like the Bahamas or wherever I was, they would, I would think that they would trade places with me in a heartbeat. If they
Right.
said, listen, all I need to do is rent out this property, take a little bit of risk, and worst case scenario, like you run it as a long-term rental, like I would just think that they would jump on that every single day of the week. You say that to somebody in the US who already just has it so baseline good that they don't see the risk the same way, or maybe they don't see the reward the same way because they already have a baseline level of good,
Yeah.
and they're not willing to. So I don't know. That was just something that jumped out to me. Have you ever had any travel experience that put anything into perspective for you, like that, or not really?
Well, yes. So first off, yes, I think you're right that a whole bunch of people in other countries would trade places with you in a heartbeat. And people in the US, we can, American citizens, we can, and I understand we want to make things better and we want to consistently improve. Like that is fine. And yet they can also just like complain, right? Complain about first world problems, as we say. And going in these other countries, so many people would love the ability to immigrate to the United States. Like that is something that is very difficult to do from a lot of countries, and they would do that if they can because they know how much you can create that generational wealth in the United States. Like that is why, because you can make a ton of money. They know it's more expensive to live there. They know all these things, and yet they know that that's where opportunity lies. Because in a lot of these other countries, there is not the same opportunity. And specifically, there's a much more like class, classes and less ability to migrate between classes, right? To raise the level from how you have been raised and how your parents were and everything like that. So I think that is a big piece of it. Of one piece you're saying of like, yes, the opportunity in the United States and how Americans can be so risk averse and not feel like they need to go out because they're so comfortable with their baseline skills taken care of. I think there's a second aspect of what you said too about how you found that these people there were pretty content in situations that were rough, right? And
Yeah.
that's what I see that a lot as well. And I think what's interesting is that in these other countries, I think where things are rougher, I think a lot of people depend more on their faith. Their faith is more a part of their life, whether they're Christian or like here where I'm in Vietnam right now, Buddhism is the prevalent religion. It is a major part of people's lives. Versus in the United States, I think a lot of people may have a religious faith and yet it may not be an actual. It may be that they are culturally Christian, for example, rather than it being like a living, breathing faith that they depend on and that they believe that God is going to take care of them no matter what, and everything like that. So I think that for me, in my lived experience of travel, which may be different than others, I have seen that people and their reliance on their faith, I think, helps with that comfort with where they are.
Totally. Yeah. That's super, super interesting perspective. So now I want to get back to what you were leaving off in your story about. I know it's a big, big circle we're going back to, but okay. So you realized you want this freedom, right?
Mhm.
You got into real estate. Kind of walk us through, how did that start? What did that actually look like getting
Right.
into real estate?
And also So with my journey into real estate, Bailey, I will say, as I think about that, I can totally empathize with people who feel the fear of real estate investing. So for me, the start to real estate investing was house hacking, renting out our basement. And I will say one of the few reasons I wasn't raised in a family that invested in real estate, one of the few reasons that I really felt comfortable doing that was because my husband had coworkers who were, real estate investors who would pretty much move to a new house, rent out the old one, and accumulated portfolios that way. And so it's like, these people do it. Like, they're no better, smarter, whatever. And they could tell me, I could hear these people's stories. And this is such a huge part of it. And that's why I love podcasts like this is they could hear these people's stories to be like, I did it. It was okay. Right. Instead of all these worst case scenarios that we make up in our head or that people who haven't done it love to share with us. And it was still scary. It was still stressing. Like, because this was back in 2000 it was 2013. So, we didn't have bigger pockets. We didn't have as many resources. So I remember like getting a lease copy from one of my husband's coworkers and going through and like customizing it myself and everything. And kind of stressing out, but being like, you know what? It's just a year. And if we don't like it, we don't have to do it again. And then it was great. It was the easiest money that we made. And so it was like, oh my gosh, we need to figure out how to do more of this. Like all those fears didn't materialize. If anything, it brought the great people into our lives and it was like a great opportunity. So then we just were saving up for down payments and expanding our rental portfolio one property at a time was how we started out from that.
Love it. And just one key thing that you mentioned is like being around people who are doing it. Easy peasy. Like the idea of that is just if it's a foreign concept to you and you're interested in it, get around people who it's not a foreign concept to them. And it starts to become just more common, more natural. I remember when I got started, I joined a mastermind group and people can join paid groups, people can join free groups, people can do whatever the heck they want. But anyways, because there's so many ways to do it. It's not just like, hey, you need to spend a ton of money to be around people. You don't have to. There's plenty of free ways to start too. But anyways, like by being exposed, I had two different exposures in my life at the time. One exposure was I was a college student. I was in a fraternity and I was surrounded by I was living the college life. But at the same time, I was in this online community with these people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who were all in on real estate. It was like two completely different worlds at the
Uh-huh.
exact same time. But if I was just around the college, like no one in college was talking about investing in real estate. I didn't even know that was a thing from anybody I talked to, including my professors in college. They didn't
Right.
even invest in real estate. So yeah, just hammer in there, get around people who are doing what you want to do. And slowly but surely, it'll become very normalized in
Mhm.
whether that's real estate, whether that's like how you travel, whether that's the clothes like literally anything, it just becomes more natural.
Mhm.
So good point there. Um, so you started with the house hack
Mhm.
and kind of talk, where did it go? Where did it snowball from there?
So originally in my real estate investing, I was very much like the solopreneur DIY. And part of that was because I lived in a rather expensive market where it wasn't necessarily a great cash flowing market. It was in Northern Virginia outside of DC. This is someplace that it does appreciate. But, if that point as like a new baby real estate investor where, I had left my teaching job and was getting into this and my husband still had the W2, but like we were looking for something that would be in the black, right? When we invested. And so we were in a market where it was tough to find that and where you pretty much had to self manage to make the numbers work like that. And so we found this niche in our local area of like these condos, these older condos where you pay less for a condo than you would for a townhouse or a single family, but they still rented at a pretty high rate for these 2 and 3 bedroom condos. And the HOA and condo fees weren't ridiculous. So the numbers worked out because you got all these amenities. You didn't have to pay for any kind of exterior care. Like the numbers worked and it would be in the black. So over the
Yeah.
next few years, we accumulated a portfolio of several of these condos in just a few there were only a couple condo complexes that qualified. So it was really funny because in one of the condo complexes, we ended up with, I think, 3 or 4 condos over time, and like the HOA manager knew us and everything. Um, but we did that, and it was very DIY, which meant that there was we could grow, and yet there were limits to that growth because we were only investing where we could do it ourselves, and there's just a limit of your time and capacity. Like, I distinctly remember my oldest child, with one tenant turnover. I enlisted a friend that I paid, and the friend and I went and painted this condo because it needed a new coat of paint inside for this turnover. And I remember taking like my daughter's like pack and play, like portable crib, and putting it in a closet, and that's where she napped and like played while we were doing this. So very, very DIY. And then what happened is in 2019, we went and visited Myrtle Beach. We had just lost out in a multiple offer situation on another one of those condos in Northern Virginia. So I had the pre approval in hand, and we'd always dreamed of having a beach house. But when we looked in other markets, it hadn't worked. So I was like, well, what do the numbers look like here? I just go on Zillow, see some stuff for rent, go on Airbnb, see what it's like listed for. And I was like, oh, these numbers look much better. And like totally fell in to buying a short-term rental in Myrtle Beach. Uh, Put in an offer, got under contract while we were there. This was like our second or third time to Myrtle Beach ever. Like, this was a total like spontaneous thing. But what that
Right.
was great about buying that is that it taught me, and it forced me, again, we talk about you got to get outside of your comfort zone. It forced me to start running my investments like a business instead of like a solopreneur DIY situation, because I could not drive 8 hours down to Myrtle Beach to paint between turnovers. I could not drive down there to deal with cleaning or tenant issues or anything like that. So I had to start building out the systems, the team, the tech that we need in order to really run this like a business and something that can be scalable. So that was a really big turning point for me, in my investing business and how I ran it.
For sure. So those ones in Virginia, Northern Virginia, those were all long-term rentals, or were those also
They
short-term?
were. Those were long-term rentals. And
Okay.
so when we bought this property in Myrtle Beach on a whim, it was not only our first long distance, it was also our first short-term rental. So and this was like, I think we closed like August 2019, and my third child was born March of 2020. So I remember we went down in beginning of September, like right after the high season, to still kind of do some stuff ourselves because I was transitioning out of that vibe, right? And it was so hot because Myrtle Beach can still be very hot at the beginning. And I was like, I am in hell because I was like super pregnant, and you're always hot when you're pregnant anyway. And it was just like, this is a trial. But you know what? It worked, and it led to some great things.
So what first gave you the confidence to go from you were comfortable with the condo long-term rentals in Virginia to now doing Airbnbs in Myrtle Beach? Like what do you feel like gave you the confidence to be able to do that? Also long distance.
That's a good question. I feel like I knew that like the idea that everything is figure outable kind of thing, right? Like I knew that it's not like surgery. It's not like it's brain surgery where I need to have years of special experience to do this. Like everyday people do it every time and do it all the time. And so I was like, I know there's tech. I know that the other thing, though, I will say that was important is I knew that in the Myrtle Beach market, from the research that I had done, that there were the service providers that I would need. That can be tricky, I think, in some markets, especially with the midterm rentals where you maybe aren't in like the short term rental, vacation rental market. When you're in more of a midterm rental market, finding like the cleaners and the handyman and things that can do that can be tricky. But I knew that from my research that in Myrtle Beach, a lot of people self-managed. They didn't always use the management companies versus some other markets are very management company heavy. So cleaners and handymen and all those people that you needed were used to working with owners who were self-managing. And so it's like, if I can have those people on that team, then like I can figure out the rest.
For sure. And how I think about like, again, it's like one thing that's so hot on my mind because I've talked to so many people recently that like I'm trying to figure it out, but just to speak it out loud, like something for me that allows me to take risks, like buying properties, in different states I haven't seen, is just like, what's the downside? I know everyone's brain moves little bit differently. Like yours, it sounded like yours is more like everything's figure outable. Like we can make it work. Mine is like, I also think that for sure, but it's like, and if it doesn't, what happens then? Because everyone is worried about the worst case, but I don't think they actually play out what the worst case is,
Mhm.
which is really worst case scenario, especially with like a midterm or short term strategy. What if it doesn't rent as a midterm rental or short term rental? What about a long term rental? Okay. So, worst case scenario, you're telling me that if you needed to, you could basically rent it out as a long term rental, either make a small amount of money per month, or again, we're talking worst case scenario, lose a certain amount per month that you already know, like $200 a month. And then you realize shortly after that, oh my God, after giving this real estate thing a try, this isn't for me. And that is like the worst case scenario. Now, obviously, to get even worse than that, the market could crash and 100 things could happen, which is why you can't just take risks like that aren't calculated, all that stuff. But I don't know. That's just something that helps me at least. It's like, all right, I'm going to buy this property. And if things don't go well, I'm going to sell it. And if it doesn't sell for what I bought it for, maybe I'll lose 10 grand on it. And don't get me wrong. Warren Buffett's rule number one is don't lose money. So I'm talking worst case scenarios, but I don't think it's ever as bad as people like the worst case is never as bad as people think. But
Right.
anyways, so
Well, and I agree. And I think that often if people have to voice like what's the worst that can happen, if somebody's like thinking and they're thinking like what you just walked through, Bailey, that like mental of like, oh, I'd have to sell and lose $10,000 and be like, okay, would $10,000 make or break you? Is that going to put you on the street? And the truth is that often those worst case scenarios are really not that transformative to their lives. The real issue there is that then they would feel like a failure. Because I think that fear of failure is just so ingrained. It's like a part of like the American culture, that fear of failure. And so uh that's what I think it really comes down to. And so I love your idea of like have a voice. What's the worst that could happen? And when you say it out loud, you realize that's not even going to be a life-changing situation. So this is a okay risk to make.
right. And when you were saying that, it kind of just another thing sparked in my head where if a friend of mine said to me, or even if they didn't tell me this up front, but they took a massive risk for themselves personally, like they started a business, they went all in, they invested all their money on a business and things didn't work out. And they said, hey, Billy, I just gave it my all. I'm still trying at this. Can I crash on your couch for X period of time? Heck yeah. Like you
Right.
like if that's the worst case scenario, again, everyone has different worst cases. And if vice versa, if I gave it my all, risked all my money and, things didn't work out, my worst case scenario is moving back with my parents, which I don't want to do. But when people play out the worst case, it's like, I think you're right with the fact that it's not necessarily moving back with your parents in that scenario is like the bad part. It's like the idea that you failed and that everyone knows you failed, like that kind of thing. So I could see that for sure being a big factor in it. So
Well,
makes sense. Okay. Yeah.
you hit on another thing there too that I think is important for real estate investors to think about, which is, and this is something I've seen as we go to different countries, like Americans are fiercely independent, right? And so you say that, Sarah, like it would be really, really difficult for somebody to ask a friend if they could crash on their couch for 99% of Americans versus some other cultures where there is more of the sense of helping each other and the sense of community and everything like that. It's really funny how stark it can be in different countries and in different cultures. Um, we actually have the issue when we travel in other cultures that are more community focused that we have. So my youngest child, who's now 5, almost 6, we want him to be independent and do things himself. He is the third child. He is the baby. He already gets babied a lot. So every once in a while, we're like,
Yeah.
no, dude, just do it yourself. And the thing is, in these other cultures, random strangers will help him. So like we're staying at a we're pretty much living in a resort because it's so affordable here in Vietnam for 3 months with a breakfast buffet, and he'll be like, "Oh, I want X." We're like, "Okay, just go get it." But what ends up happening is he comes back like today, he needed bacon. He gets like 2 pieces of bacon, right? He goes to get the bacon out himself. He comes back with a bowl full of bacon. And I was like, "Someone helped you, didn't they?" Because I knew there was no way he would get that much bacon on his own. And he was like,
That's funny. Yeah. I just differences in cultures and how people live.
yeah.
That's really funny, actually.
Well, and I think for real estate investors that relates because like get over your like intense independence. People want to help you. Like you were saying with the community, with the mastermind, like there are people who will be your mentor. There are people who will help you out there if you just say, like ask, if you just ask, even just a little ask,
Right.
and there's people there who are eager and it makes them feel good to help you. So give them the opportunity.
For sure. Yep. I agree with you there for sure. I have a lot of stories I can share there, but I want to keep going. So you get this Airbnb in Myrtle Beach and you're starting to basically figure out all the systems, all the softwares. What kind of, I guess, yeah, where'd it go from there? What were your biggest learnings?
Right.
What did you kind of realize?
Well, so there were definitely like, what did we get ourselves into moments, right? So the first was when we went down in the beginning of September. I was telling you it was like super hot and everything, and we go in this house, and it had looked nice when we had done the tour, but then you actually get into it and you get into like the linen closet or things, and you're like, this thing is a hot mess, right? It was like, it looked clean enough when we had, I think they might have had like a special cleaning before the showings or something, like, in between. But we get in there and I'm like, the cleaner's got to go. Like, this is not good. And we had already been using him for like a month or so, and like had formed a relationship with him. And so it was like, that was tough, right? Like, we got to fire this cleaner. We're here for a week. We got to fire the cleaner. We got to interview new cleaners. We got to replace like all the linens, right? And all these other things. So there was a lot of like, seeing under the hood that we hadn't been able to see in a normal walkthrough, because there's a lot to see in a short-term rental, and we were new and we missed it. So that was one of the first things. And the cleaners we got after that were better, but still had issues. And so thankfully, the third cleaner we brought in, we still use to this day. And I think we may have switched to her in like 2021-ish, maybe 2020. So um she's been great. But yeah, that was some of the first challenges, I would say. But then we figured out the tech, we've talked about hospitable and everything like that. And we figured out the team. So that's where I started to bring in virtual assistants into my business, and in terms of the portfolio, we did so well with that one that we ended up growing to, we now have a total of 3 rentals in Myrtle Beach that we do short term and we do midterm in the off season. And then I also moved. So in 2020, we moved from Northern Virginia to Chattanooga, Tennessee, in part because it was a great real estate investing market. And so I was a real estate agent along with an investor. And so restarted my real estate agent career, restarted investing in that market, and built up a portfolio of properties there. Ended up eventually selling everything as the leases ended in our Northern Virginia properties. We sold those and redeployed the capital. That was what got us more stuff in Myrtle Beach and stuff in Chattanooga.
Gotcha. Okay. And then at what point, well, we'll circle back to some of that stuff, but at what point did you then move and start traveling? Like you said, you're in Vietnam for everyone
Yeah.
listening. So like at what point in that story did you actually move and start traveling overseas?
So we started traveling. It's been almost 2 years now. So we left end of February 2024. And what kind of happened in between there? So in 2020, we moved to Chattanooga. I restart my real estate agent business, ended up bringing VAs onto that, growing that to a team that focused on working with real estate investors, which I ended up selling fall of 2023. During that time, my husband left his W
And
2
just
and
for
his.
clarification, real quick clarification, you sold you had like an agency that was helping real estate. That's what you sold?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Yes. So
Got
I had built that for a little over 2 years, and while I was doing that, my husband quit his W-2 and started our virtual assistant business, and we also started private money lending with his retirement account that we could move over to a self-directed IRA, because he'd left the W-2. And so we got into virtual assistants, we got into private lending, and I had this real estate team, and I decided to sell it. I actually went to a conference for real estate agents, and they were showing all these great things, and I walked out of that conference and I was like, I am not excited to implement any of this. I think I need to sell my team because I feel like I want to move on to other stuff. So I did that, and in doing that, we realized our virtual assistant business, our private lending business, everything else we were doing was online, and so we could start traveling full time. So that's what we did with the 3 kids.
it. Okay. Wow. What a cool transition. So you sold that business and then you and your husband had the virtual assistant, staffing agency of sorts, and then private lending. And then you were able to basically do those remotely and then started traveling
Yep.
pretty much. Name some places you've been since 2024.
So we started off in Latin America. That was easy because, same time zone as the US. Spanish is a language that's a little, same alphabet, easier to get. So we did Colombia, we did Mexico, and then we came over. We did the Philippines for a month. We did Vietnam for a couple months then, and now we're back circled. We did Korea, uh, Japan. We went to Sri Lanka for a week, which Sri Lanka, people don't talk about it much. It was amazing. Like everybody in the family wants to go back. And then we did the UK for a summer. We hit England, Scotland, and Wales. We saw so many castles that we got sick of them. Portugal and Spain, which were very nice. And now we are back in Vietnam again.
Incredible. Incredible. So, okay. So all this is basically made possible from basically everything you've mentioned so far, in the story of taking the risk from doing the house hack to then the long-term rentals, short-term rentals, VA, lending, all that stuff. I want to zoom in specifically to the virtual assistant side of things.
Mhm.
So, if you first, I have so many questions on it, but if you first want to just mention what you and your company does with virtual assistants, and then I have a bunch of questions that the listeners will, and myself will definitely find valuable.
Sure. So what we do is we have a virtual assistant staffing agency. So a entrepreneur, a real estate entrepreneur, a real estate investor comes to us and says, "Hey, I need somebody." And what we really focus on, and this is like trial and error. You got to keep in mind like my background and like finance and being being a high school math teacher. My husband's background is computer engineering. So like we've looked at the data from our business that's been over 4 years old. I'm getting off a tangent here, but we focus on helping entrepreneurs get amazing executive assistants. We call them the ultimate executive assistant because having seen people try to bring on VAs in a variety of places in their business, we have seen that if they bring on an amazing executive assistant first, that is the most transformational hire. So what we do is, let's say you come, Bailey, and you're like, okay, I'm my business is growing. I've got all these amazing things I'm doing. I've got my midterm rentals. I've got my other like coaching and helping people that I do and my podcast. I need an executive assistant who can handle that, right? Who can help me run my midterm rentals and maybe help me with like the tech online presence, right? Let's say social media and podcast. That's all stuff an executive assistant does. So you come, you say that, and based off of your role, that role, what we've seen in talking with you, and based off of your personality and what kind of personality you want in that virtual assistant, we make the job description, we make a 30, 60, 90-day onboarding plan. We go out and recruit and interview and bring you, hey, Bailey, this is Marie. Marie, based on everybody we've seen, Marie is the best virtual assistant for you. Here is her experience in these fields. Here's her college degree. And she's from the Philippines, so she speaks English totally like a native because English is the de facto language in the Philippines. They have Filipino as well, but we've spent time there. Every sign, every street sign, every restaurant, it's in English. So we present that to you. You say, hey, yeah, Marie's amazing. You meet with her, and then you get started working with her. We provide a tech stack to help with all of that on the back end. So we've got like a project management system. We're giving her ChatGPT. We're giving her Canva Pro. We're giving her CapCut Pro. We're giving her all those tools so she can be, and training, so she can be an ultimate executive assistant. You pay a monthly subscription to us. We are paying Marie out of that. We're handling all the HR and issues. If you've got any issues, we're there to support you the way. If Marie ever quits, we're in charge of finding a replacement. If you ever have issues and want to replace Marie or the job changes, we can do that. Or if you want to expand your VA team, we help you do that as well.
Gotcha. Okay. Super cool. And I have like a million questions for you on that. I want to first, yeah, there's so many ways I can go with this. I want to first share my experience of learning about virtual assistants and then how I've used them over the past like 6 years, because I think it's kind of interesting and hopefully the listeners need to find it interesting as well. So back in college, when I basically started doing the real estate stuff, I learned about virtual assistant. I don't know how, I don't remember like that one moment, but I do remember the first business that I ever did in college, even before I started buying real estate, was I mentioned I joined that mastermind group. And in that mastermind group, me and this guy were essentially cold calling homeowners. And it got to a point, I think after we started having some success with it, that we realized, okay, this is definitely not, this is a great task, but not something that we want to be doing. So we hired a virtual assistant from Egypt, actually. And he had a perfect English accent. You wouldn't even know he was from anywhere else, which
Wow.
I don't necessarily think that that's like a stereotype for Egypt to have no accent, but this guy was unbelievable. And he was with us for, I don't know, probably 6 months roughly. I don't know what happened necessarily. This was 6 years ago, but that was like my first kind of experience with virtual assistants. Then at the same time, again, like 6 years ago, I had a podcast I was doing. So I had someone who was editing it and doing stuff like that. And the technology has changed so much too, that the virtual assistant was doing back then, AI can do a lot of it now. Now, I still need a virtual assistant, but it's kind of cool to see like the progression of it. I've had virtual assistants for my Airbnb management business. I've had international Philippine VAs do that. I've had American. I tapped into like the military mom niche. That was kind of interesting.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then there's probably like several more that I missed in between. But most recently, I brought on a virtual assistant to help me edit this podcast essentially. And tons of trials and tribulations with that experience. She ended up quitting on me, like just like out of the blue, long story short. But my summary of virtual assistants, every time I've had one, it is like magic. Like a weight is being lifted off my shoulders.
Right.
And I have a friend in a completely different industry who he hired his virtual assistant. I started telling him about it. He hired one. He fell in love with the whole idea where you can essentially have a really great worker for a lot less than you're paying someone in America. And they just, yeah, lift so much off your shoulders. So that's kind of my background and experience with, I've had a wide variety of experiences, some really good, some not so great, but nonetheless, cool experiences. One thing that you mentioned though, is the word executive assistant. I'm
Mhm.
curious, like, what does that actually mean? Because I hear like virtual assistant, executive assistant, and then all combinations in between. But what is an executive assistant?
So when we are helping somebody with like getting them an executive assistant, what makes that special is that they are going to take workload off of the entrepreneur's plate. That I think is like the number one criteria, or the entrepreneur's to-do list as well. So they're not just going to do something that the entrepreneur would like to have in their business but doesn't. So like Bailey, you gave that example of somebody do cold calling. A lot of real estate investors come and they're like, I just want somebody to cold call. Cold calling is tough for any human being to do, right? You're talking about success rates are going to be in the single digits. And for any person, that's really tough to have the discipline to do that. And so, and then often the real estate investor isn't really going to manage that. I mean, in reality, is probably not going to manage that cold caller well. And it's going to be a lonely job. They're not necessarily going to give it their all. They're not going to see the result. And people can have bad experiences with it, right? Not everyone.
Yeah.
Sometimes people have great experiences with cold callers, but like people, and in general, like I know there are listeners out there who are going to be like, oh my gosh, I tried a virtual assistant and I had all these fails. I know. And that's why our business fixes those fails because I hired virtual assistants directly at first. Our business didn't exist. And I saw what happened and we learned from that. And my husband did the same and learned from it. And so we have incorporated that into our business. So, like, one of the things you talked about is how this podcast editor quit out of nowhere for 6 months. One of the number one things that virtual employees, we can talk about remote virtual assistants, domestic virtual assistants, but virtual employees, one of the number one things they complain about is not feeling like they have a sense of community. And if you hire a VA direct, then they're just working for you. You're probably the only person they're interacting with. And they're probably going to feel pretty lonely, right? They're not going to feel like they have a sense of community. And so that's one of the things that we saw, and that affects their retention rate, like how long they're going to stay with you. That's one of the things we saw with our virtual assistants. And so we've been very diligent and we've been intentional about creating a sense of community. So, our virtual staffing company is called Workergenics, and the VAs really feel like they're part of the community. There's things we do on the back end. There's like, we do like these happy hour training calls a couple times a month, like where they play like fun training games and get to know each other. There's chats and other things that we do to create that sense of community, which has actually made our virtual assistant turnover rate very, very low. Pretty much people leave, like virtual assistants leave if they have like some health emergency that prevents them from working, or they are Filipino, family is really important. If they have a family obligation, like they need to go work in a family business. Other than that, they do not quit and leave. And that's because we've created a sense of community, which if you hire direct is very difficult for you to do. And so there's just some things like that we've done that I think make it so that when people work with us, they get a better experience. And it's still like the cost comes out to about $11 and change an hour, which is less than minimum wage in many US states.
Yeah. That's awesome. That makes a lot of sense. And when he said they either leave for family or medical, mine was actually a combination. She left because her father had a medical issue, and I didn't get the whole story, but it was a combination of that. So, okay. So now for real estate investors specifically, those who are doing midterm rentals, short-term rentals, or even long-term rentals, um, most people, I mean, I talk about doing this all remotely. So
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling that a lot of my followers also do stuff remotely, maybe
Right.
not, but regardless, like kind of give a little playbook masterclass on, I mean, there's so many questions that pop up when it comes to real estate investors hiring their first executive assistant. Like
Right.
when do you, I guess to start, when's the right time? What are the right tasks to give off? Like,
Yes.
yeah,
So I would say the right time is, well, first off, do you want to grow, right? As an investor, do you want to grow your real estate investing business, whether that's more doors, whatever the case is? If you want to grow, then if that's a yes, then the like then it is more likely that you should hire a virtual assistant, because a virtual assistant is going to take all your bottom 80% tasks and let you focus on the top 20% tasks so you can grow. Typically, those bottom 80% tasks are going to be the repeat tasks that are like your basic administrative tasks, right? So if you're doing any marketing, right? You can, and the other piece of this, you're getting a lot of like my wisdom all in one here, but the other piece is I love the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule. And I highly recommend investors keep this in mind when they think of a real estate VA. You want to do the 20% to set them up to do the other 80% of the task, especially the first time you're giving them something. So if you want them to take over this routine task of checking your hospitable, right? Checking your hospitable and messaging every day, you're gonna have to be like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to give them, if I don't have it already, some sort of guidance on what to do with messages, right? What messages are like, do you have any like tables or like replies that you use frequently? Like, give them some guidance. Or what I would recommend is like you can make a custom GPT with your voice or your training in it, right? And then they can use it and they can execute 80%, right? Now, over time, they'll be able to do 100%. But I think of when you think of tasking, make sure you give them enough that they can do it properly. But I would say for people doing midterm rentals, if you are using something like Hospitable, if you're using any kind of like electronic locks, if you're using anything like the smart thermostats, if you're using stuff like cameras and you want people to check them periodically, that is what a virtual assistant can do so well. So, like some of the things I have them do is checking our, it sounds silly, but we have so many issues with our trash cans, right? Like, did the trash cans get taken out? Did the trash cans get returned, right? Did the guests take them out? Did they bring them back, right? And so part of their SOP is to, on trash days, to check that the trash is out and that the trash is back, the cans are back, stuff like that.
real quick on that. How are they actually checking that? Is that just through a camera?
That's through a camera. Yep.
Okay.
So, it's pretty easy to get virtual assistants into the back end of all that tech stuff. So I would say what I recommend giving to them first, if you're going to think big picture, you're going to do this if you want to grow and if you're starting to feel like you're the bottleneck in that growth, right? If you're like, oh my gosh, I have to do this long, I'm not able to do it. Maybe that's running the numbers on properties. Maybe that's making calls on properties. Maybe that's looking at stuff on the MLS. Maybe it's because you're spending so much time on the back end operations that you can't spend time on the lead gen. Or maybe it's that you want a VA to do that lead gen work and evaluation. They can do the deal analysis and at least do a lot of research and bring you the numbers as well. But I've kind of been all over the place there. But I think you get an idea of pretty much anything that's on a computer or on a phone and is repeat work where you can have it an SOP or a procedure and follow it to do the task, they can do, and they can take all of that off your plate so that you can do the new stuff, the creative stuff, the networking, right? That they cannot do. And that's really going to help you grow your business.
Totally. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Let me ask you this. So I'm just thinking about my business. So when I had virtual assistants in the past for my Airbnb management business, I felt like at that point I had 30 properties. I was essentially managing several different places. It was a lot. So when I had these virtual assistants, it was like I felt like I couldn't have done it without them. Now, one thing that I did at the time, like I said, some of them were US military moms. So not your typical like overseas VA. And one reason why I did that is because I was always so nervous about not the tasks of like checking the cameras or checking the door locks. It was more so the tasks of like calling vendors if they had to call guests. In your example of like doing lead gen of calling realtors, like how do you get over that barrier? Is it as simple as just getting somebody who has great English?
So the funny the funniest story I have on this is, I told you the last place we lived was Chattanooga, Tennessee. In Tennessee, people still have Southern accents, right? Versus other part of the South.
Yeah.
And I remember being in a conversation with somebody in Tennessee worrying about a virtual assistant's accent. Well, this guy was speaking to me in a Southern accent, which I was like, you realize you have an accent too. So the thing is, it can be an issue. I think what you got to keep in mind is that in the Philippines, they're getting English language instruction in school. Like I said, it's everywhere. So the Philippines, it's interesting. Something we've seen in different cultures is how many people, different countries are tapped into like pop culture and things like that to different levels and different ways. The Filipinos are very tapped into pop culture, like very much like, and these little kids on like Philippines playgrounds are speaking perfect English because they're watching like Peppa Pig and all these shows. So there may be an accent, but understanding is 100% there. That's the first thing I would say with Filipino VAs is that they are understanding everything in English. Okay. There may be an
Yeah.
accent. And if you have a job that is cold calling or lead, like if they're doing a lot of lead gen on the phone, I do value that accent. Now, in terms of somebody helping manage properties, I have an accounting VA who does like our property management, accounting, and bookkeeping, and he's made calls. I'm trying to remember why in the world we were having him make calls, but like he's made calls on our behalf, and he has a pretty significant accent. Like he did not get hired to be client facing, let's say, but he's made calls to
Right.
vendors or things like that, and it's never been an issue because I mean, if you're the client and you're trying to call a vendor and support them and give them business, they're going to talk to whoever they need to talk to get business. But
Right.
I do think if somebody is lead gen or something like that, to consider the accent, just realize that it's a give and take, right? And so you want them to be understandable, right? You want people to be able to understand them. You want it to be not an issue in terms of understanding and comprehension. But having no accent at all, it's possible. Just realize you might have to give up other skills in order to get somebody with no accent.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And the Tennessee example, like that makes a lot of sense where like in the US, we are basically a mix of so many cultures of people who like moved here a year ago, 10 years ago, 20, and still have like whatever accent they came with from wherever they came with. So that does actually make a lot of sense. I mean, I now thinking about it from that perspective, if I was the recipient, if I was a guest that had an issue and for whatever reason it escalated to the fact that I needed a phone call, as long as that person like handled the situation well, I guess I wouldn't care about the accent. I mean, I don't, to a degree, I don't want to, when you call like, I don't want to give, I don't want to give too many examples to
Yeah.
get myself in trouble here, but like, well, that makes sense. Like, you just want someone who's going to take care of your problem that you feel like understands you. And
Right.
if they seem like they're part of the company, which they would because whatever, then I guess you don't really think, you know what, that guy had a Southern accent. He must be from these select states. Or, hey, this guy had this accent. They must be from whatever country. So that makes sense for sure.
Well, and I think, you're talking about the call center experiences. And I get so frustrated
Yeah.
with call centers. And part of that is it's the being on hold. It's the fact that they are just giving you canned responses. It's the fact that they can't really help you, right? There's a lot that is in there versus just that they're somewhere else. If they're somewhere else, but they can still help me and I don't have to be on hold for half an hour, I'm
Right.
happy. And so part of that I think is really important, like big picture here, Bailey, if you're thinking about virtual assistants in this like midterm rental space, is if you don't want the virtual assistant to come to you every time something's out of the ordinary, then it's important that you either have like really clear like decision tree or like procedures for them to follow, And or the second thing is that you focus on a virtual assistant who feels comfortable making decisions, right? There are different types of personalities. And especially if you consider that like you're the boss man, right? And this person is going to report to you and these are your properties and they're your babies, there can be some initial hesitation by anybody reporting to you, whether they're a virtual assistant or not, to feel comfortable making decisions, to feel comfortable actually telling that guest, you know, can I give you a credit for this night or something like that. And so that's something that's really important is choose somebody who's comfortable making decisions, give them the tools to make those decisions. And also, not every decision is going to be exactly how you do it. And so think beforehand how you're going to handle that. My thought is sometimes my VAs offered a credit that I wouldn't have offered. What's that cost me? 50 bucks? Maybe a
Right.
100? I have saved so much more than $50 or $100 by having that virtual assistant do all of this so I can do everything else that I do, that it is not even like worth concerning myself about.
For sure. That makes sense. And I heard something similar where it's like, if you have 10 people doing 80% of the job you would, that's 10 people working on your behalf. And some people will probably do the task better in certain things. And then some people might not be as good as you, but as long as you can take your time and put it where it's most valuable, or if you get to the point where you can do whatever the heck you want while your team is still working too. That's definitely a cool spot to be in. So I know I'm looking at the clock here. We're running a little bit high on the time here. So if people want to learn more about virtual assistants, follow you in your real estate journey and your travels, and we didn't even touch on your private lending, which could be a whole nother uh, hour-long podcast. But where can people get in touch with you?
The best way is to go to my website, adriennegreen.com. Everything is on there. You can also follow from Instagram from there and DM me. I'm happy to chat. I also have a tool on there called the Freedom Blueprint that walks you through like the 10 things that I did at first with my portfolio to go from DIY solopreneur to really creating this as a business so that I can have the freedom that I have today.
Cool. Love it. Yeah, we'll link all that down below. So if you're listening on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or somewhere else, we'll leave that all down below to make it easy for you guys. Adrienne, thank you so much again for coming on, and we'll see you guys all in the next episode.
Thanks, Bailey.